I want to recommend you 5 things to do before you start any mix. The first one is colour and name your tracks. Let's load these tracks in. They've all loaded in, but it's really difficult to see what's what. So let's just go through and do some colour coding and track naming. All colour coded. That is now much easier to navigate. You can see the drums, bass, guitars and synths at a glance. The next thing I do might be a little bit controversial. What I do is I make sure that my clip gain on my tracks, for example this one, is set roughly to make a mix balance with faders at 0. In other words, if I were to send my mix off to a mix engineer and they were just to bring the track in and set their faders at 0, they'd have my rough mix. That's a massive bonus. Also, it means when doing your rough mix, your faders don't end up being in all sorts of positions, which is just, again, awkward to work with. It doesn't do any harm, but it is just really unpleasant to sit there and use faders that are like this. It's much better to just have them in a line. So let's go through and just do a basic rough mix with clip gain first. So now that I've been through the tracks and made sure I've clip gained things, for example, you can see on the hats I brought them down by -14 decibels. The guitars lost quite a little bit of level as well. You can now hit play and there will be somewhat of a balanced track with all of the faders at 0. Let's have a listen. The next thing I like to do is just do any panning. In this particular track, it's only the guitars that I want to pan hard left and right. If there was more going on panning wise, then I would just go through and make sure that I put things in the stereo field where I want them to be. The next important step is to put on some mix bus EQ. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to choose a Pultec EQ, and that allows me to just very quickly brighten and darken the track and see if anything helps either direction. Let's have a listen and just have a moment's play with the EQ. The EQ helps us out straight away, just makes the track sound a little bigger by just adding a little bit of brightness and a little bit of super low end. The final step that I think it's worth taking before we really get into the details of mixing is to put on a mix bus compressor. In this case, I'm going to open up and I'm going to choose an SSL classic bus compressor. My settings for this are going to be attack time 30, I'm going to leave the release time on auto, make sure ratio is set to 2. I'm not going to worry about sidechain filter here, I'm going to leave that off for now, and I'm going to bring this down just until I start to see a little bit of gain reduction. And we're already making brilliant improvements to our mix. So those are the 5 things that I think are really worth doing before you start your mix. Firstly, name and colour your tracks because it makes your navigation so much easier. Number 2, perhaps a controversial point with some, make sure that you set your regions, the gain on your regions, so when your faders are at unity, you're listening back to your rough mix. That helps if you're going to send those tracks off to a mix engineer to be mixed, but also it just is a great place to start your mix from. Your faders don't end up all over the place, and in digital, it doesn't matter if those tracks are quite quiet coming in. It doesn't hurt anything. Then, step 3, do some panning. Make sure that your instruments are in the right space left to right. That's a big deal because that gives you your stereo width. Again, before we ever really get into any mixing. Step number 4, get a little mix EQ and just try adding a little bit of brightness and a little bit of low end. See if it helps the track. It often does, and it's an easy early win to make your mix sound cool. Then step 5, add a mix bus compressor, just doing a tiny little bit of gain reduction, just so you can get a little bit of excitement in your track. And by that point, you'll be in a really good place to dive into your mix. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of these 5 steps. And if you would like to know more about mixing, head over to my website, recordwithalex.com. I've got a fantastic free mixing guide for you there that will really help you out when you're tackling your mixes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on another video next week.